Hello everyone, and welcome back to Chapter 8, Emotions. Previously we've been discussing the components of emotions as well as the influences on emotions. Now we're going to be diving into some guidelines of how to express emotions effectively. So, the key to it, before anything else, is to recognize your feelings, to be aware of your feelings and be able to identify emotions. A lot of times we do not we are our emotions are so elevated that we have a hard time putting it into words to identify what emotions we are feeling. The first step is to be able to identify it. Then to monitor physiological changes and nonverbal behaviors. What are you doing with your hands? What are you doing nonverbally? And how is your body reacting? That is very important because we want to be sure that we are managing ourselves. And then recognizing your thoughts and verbal messages sent to others. This is self reflection. All of this is self reflection because when we are better able to self reflect and understand when we are in those emotionally turbulent states, we are more able to take control of these situations. Also, we should choose the best language. Many suffer from impoverished emotional vocabularies, and by being unable to choose the best language to identify our emotions, we are more likely to uh, have more visceral reactions or to identify a more moderate emotion as a very intense emotion. Also, we should share multiple feelings. It's common to experience several emotions at the same time. You can be angry and sad. You can be hurt and, but still content. So there are a lot of emotions, and by sharing multiple emotions, it's creating a nuanced approach and sharing this nuanced feeling so that the other person doesn't feel like that you are just mad. No, I'm many things. Also, we should recognize the differences between feeling an emotion and acting on an emotion. Don't fear that getting in touch with your emotions will cause a disastrous course of action. Because a lot of times we feel like if we experience emotions, we will be unable to control the emotions. But the thing is that by doing that, it ends up making it so that we are not really able to take control of our emotions because we do not have practice with our emotions. So we have to be sure that we recognize the difference between feeling and acting. We can feel an emotion but not act on it. And accepting responsibility for your feelings, choosing I language rather than you language. It is not you made me feel this way. Instead, I feel this way. By doing that, it is taking responsibility for your feelings instead of saying that the other person is making me feel this way, which is just frankly inaccurate. And choose the best time and place to express your feelings. Sometimes in the moment is not the best time to express those emotions because if we do express our emotions, that might uh, that might break a situational norm, and I may be seen as seen that may affect my credibility in that scene. So that concludes a lot of the guidelines for expressing emotions. Now we're going to be diving right on into how. How do we manage our emotions? Because a lot of sometimes it is not okay to express our emotions, and at that point we have to just be able to manage our emotions. This does not mean I should not feel my emotions. Quite the opposite. It means that I should feel my emotions, recognize my emotions, possibly reframe or minimize our emotions so that we are able to use these emotions for beneficial ends. This involves facilitative and debilitative emotions. There are two types of emotions. uh, and we want to be sure that we are maximizing facilitative emotions and minimizing debilitative emotions. We will also talk about thoughts, how our thoughts can cause feelings. Then we're going to be talking about some irrational thinking that creates debilitative emotions. And then we're going to be talking about how to minimize debilitative emotions and maximize facilitative. So let's start with facilitative and debilitative. Facilitative emotions contribute to effective functioning. Certain amounts of anger, irritation can be constructive when improving unsatisfying conditions. Something as we tend to think of some emotions as bad, some emotions as good. Happy is a good emotion. Anger is a sad emotion or bad emotion. Sadness is a bad emotion. You know, uh, excitement is a good emotion. That really isn't the case because they can both be facilitative or debilitative. So facilitative contributes to effective functioning. For example, if I was really angry at someone for cheating on me, maybe a significant other, then that would contribute to effective functioning because I should be angry at that. And it would also put me out of that situation where so that I would no longer be in that situation. What about the nervousness you experience when performing? Seen as a lot of times debilitative, but it can be facilitative because it can actually boost performance. It can make you want to work harder. So, there are facilitative emotions, and any emotion can be facilitative. But when left unchecked, when emotions are too high, any of those emotions can also be debilitative, where we hinder or prevent effective performance. More intensity, extended duration, and as a result, that we are not able to function. This might be when we are so angry, are so flooded by emotions that we are unable to get a word out. We can't really think before we speak. In anger, this is very common. But what about how can happiness or contentment be debilitative? If I feel super content with where I am, or if I feel, super happy in this one thing that I'm doing, what am I going to do? I may stay there for a while. That could potentially be perceived as debilitative because I have a lot of potential to expand my experience, to try to learn new things. But if I feel happy and content, then, or too much of that, that could potentially be debilitative. But the majority are those bad emotions that become debilitative. But those bad emotions do not necessarily have to be debilitative. They can be very facilitative, as I previously discussed. So, thoughts can cause feelings. The rational emotive approach to emotions is that changing our feelings by changing unproductive interpretations. So we reappraise the events through self-talk to affect how we perceive it. It's not events that cause emotions, but our beliefs held about the events that cause those emotions, and interpretations of events can determine our feelings. So, we can have an activating event, being called a certain name. You are stupid. Then I can have the thought of being hurt or upset. But I could also have a different thought. Maybe that they don't know me. They don't know me, but what they may have seen, yeah, that was pretty stupid. So maybe I go from the consequence of hurt and upset to maybe a little bit of agreement, but that they don't really know me. Next, we have a customer being rude, seeing that they don't see me as a person. That is hugely disrespectful. And speaking from a customer service role for 9 years, something that people in the customer service industry see all too much. And the consequence is usually anger and frustration. But there are other interpretations of a customer being rude. Maybe they just don't have this, maybe they are focused on their experience. Maybe they've had other things going on. So I go from anger and frustration to understanding and maybe a little bit of identification. Yeah, I'm going through a lot too. It's not about me, it's about their situation. So we end up, the last one, an activating event of breaking off a relationship. That we then may feel that I'm not good enough or that no one's going to like me like this person did. This was the one. Instead, and that can lead to depression and loneliness. But that can also be facilitative. Well, if it wasn't going to work at this point, I'm glad I didn't waste all of this time on the relationship. Now I can get a new one. Now I can try a new interaction, a new relationship. So we can end up reframing different events to create different emotions. This is hard to do because it takes a lot of self-reflection and a lot of taking a step back from our emotions, but it is possible. We also have but we also have some ways that we irrationally think that can cause debilitative emotions. One example of this is the fallacy of perfection, an unrealistic expectation of perfect communication, that we expect ourselves to be up here, and when we end up here, we feel bad about it. So when we end up, for example, I expect to win every single board game I play because I know that I'm really good at board games. But when someone eventually beats me, then I'm like, well, this is unfair. That's not how it should have been. And as a result, I feel bad. We also have the fallacy of approval, that it's vital to obtain everyone's approval. This is a problem because it's unrealistic. No one is ever going to approve of everything that you do, nor should they. So, why are we always worried about that? We shouldn't be. We should focus on ourselves, focus on our own emotions, our own world, and then if someone approves or disapproves, that is on them. It is not up to me. I cannot affect how they perceive me. I can try my best, but in general, I'm never going to receive everyone's approval because everyone's different. So, we also have the fallacy of should, an inability to distinguish what is and what should be. So, this a lot of times could happen in an organization where someone may perceive that this is how an interaction between a an employee and a guest or customer should be, whereas, and time after time after time, it ends up being what actually is. I mean, that there will always be those customers, those guests who do not, who are so focused on their um, vacation or their guest service or their time in that business that they aren't really thinking about other people. They aren't really thinking about someone else's emotions. So they might do things differently. So by thinking about what is instead of what should be, it makes it so that we are better able to not experience those debilitative emotions. Another example of this is relationships. How should we be in a relationship? How should we act? By feeling that way, or how should our partner act? In these ways, by putting on these shoulds on people as well as on ourselves, it can cause a lot of debilitative emotions because that can then cause us to not meet those shoulds and end up treating those debilitative emotions. We also have the fallacy of overgeneralization, basing belief on a limited amount of evidence, so that because of this amount of evidence, I therefore think you're cheating. Or because of this limited amount of evidence, I think that you are being dishonest. And in so doing, it's creating these debilitative emotions even though there's not enough information. When in doubt, ask. When in doubt, listen. Next, we have the fallacy of causation. We should do nothing that can hurt or in any way inconvenience others because it will cause undesirable feelings. A lot of times this gets perceived as I am just a people pleaser. But that can actually be very harmful because it's not, no matter what we do, we could possibly hurt someone because we are all different. We all experience things differently, and what I may think may be a good thing for someone might be a bad thing for them. We shouldn't strive to hurt people, but we also shouldn't just do nothing so that we don't hurt others. So, a good example of this was one day back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth. I wanted to be in the Disney. I wanted to move up in Disney, but I felt like that if I were to try for that role of manager, although, then what would have ended up happening was I would have hurt other people who were going for that same role. That I would inconvenience them, that I would cause undesirable feelings towards me. So I did nothing because I felt like I didn't even want to deal with it. So that is something that we want to be sure we're avoiding. Also, the fallacy of helplessness. Forces beyond our control determine our satisfaction in life. This is untrue. We are not just sailboats which are continually pushed by the wind. We are not subject to all forces. We do have some agency. And when we just believe that no matter what we do, it is all helpless, that can cause a lot of debilitative emotions. And the fallacy of catastrophic expectations, operating on the assumption that if something bad can happen, it probably will. These are those people who will just automatically say, well, that will never work. Or you know what? No, that's ridiculous. No, there's so many reasons why that's going to go wrong. And then don't actually do anything. So we want to be sure that we are removing these irrational fears because, well, that one specifically, it could also go very well. And how will we know if we do not try? So there are so many of these irrational thoughts that create these debilitative emotions, but there are further ways. So by understanding that those are fallacies, that we will be able to minimize some debilitating emotions, but there are other ways to remove these debilitative emotions. First, we should monitor our emotional response. We can be in debilitative emotions without recognizing them, so we should strive to recognize them. Note the specific people you're with. Sometimes it's the relationship that causes these debilitative emotions. Also, the types of individuals. Are they parental roles? Are they people in power? Are they maybe people lower than you? That maybe people you have interactions with where you have more power, you may feel like you don't want to harm or inconvenience them in any way, so you have that debilitative emotion of maybe I shouldn't do anything. There is no great virtue in not exerting power on people or not exerting your influence on people. Influence is an everyday part of social interaction, and by not using it, there's no virtue in that. Also, setting where you are. Sometimes we experience debilitative emotions in the dentist's office or in the hospital, all of which can be those things. And then topics of conversation. Are there some topics that you feel very comfortable discussing? For me, sometimes it's about, race or gender inequities. We also record our self-talk. we should also strive to record our self-talk. Think about what are some of the things that we're saying. If we're saying to ourselves, you're stupid, you won't be able to do this, you're awful. If you're giving yourself that negative self-talk, you should dispute those irrational beliefs and change your self-talk. But it's not just about minimizing your debilitative emotions, it's also maximizing your facilitative emotions. Enjoy and savor positive emotional experiences. Because when we do that, we will be more likely to engage in more emotion or experience more emotion. Regard challenging situations as opportunities of growth instead of obstacles that are impeding my progress. Also focus on what you've gained, not what you've lost. That, for example, if someone breaks up, if you get broken up with, it's not that you have lost a relationship, it's that you have gained a great deal of experience about yourself as well as how you relate to other people and experience so that you will be able to pursue the next relationship with more intelligence on it. And choose compassion over contempt. It is very easy to be contemptuous about people doing things to us, but we all have those moments. Those people are probably experiencing the same debilitative emotions that we do. So we should always strive to choose compassion over contempt, because with contempt, it only diminishes us, whereas with compassion, it can only lead to growth because we better understand the person and we are better able to maximize those facilitative emotions. That concludes Chapter 8, Emotions. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you next time.